Welcome to the Farming on Purpose podcast, a podcast for farmers and ranchers ready to shift for a stronger future. Today's challenges in agriculture are new, but the grit and determination required to be successful are not. On the Farming on Purpose podcast, you'll hear how producers of all sizes and practices are moving mountains for things they believe in, all in the name of an industry that keeps growing and innovating for a stronger food system and stronger farm families. I'm your host, Lexi Wright, and I'm excited to discuss where producers are finding success, challenging the status quo, striving for better, and keeping our heritage alive, all while producing the food we depend on.
Welcome back to Farming on Purpose. Today I have Kody Hanner with me, and Kody is a homesteader, a homeschool mom, and the founder of the Homestead Education. Kody is from Idaho originally and focuses on creating hands-on curriculum for homeschooling. And I like that I could really easily see when I was on your website, Kody, that you focus on critical thinking and thinking about, not just what skills these kids need to learn, but also how that impacts who they're going to be in the real world. And I think that's something in this day and age we can all appreciate, whether we homeschool or public school or whatever. That's the goal for kids, is what are they going to be in the real world? So I'm excited to chat today. Do you want to tell us more about your story, how you kind of got to that point to be doing the homeschool education and the farm and all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, first off, if you're not a homeschool mom, don't run away yet. This is going to be a good chat. I'm just sure of it. But my name is Kody Hanner, and like she said, I own the Homestead Education. It came from a really, it wasn't a straight path. And, I don't think anything in life is. I grew up on a cattle ranch and I majored in ag. I was an animal science major. I focused in food safety, spent a lot of time in the slaughter plant, and I was dead set for working in the USDA. That was my whole dream. I ended up getting an internship working in food safety and quality assurance in a big food plant, like a commodities plant. And I loved it. Found something that I was convinced I was going to do for the rest of my life. And honestly, when I was in college, podcasting wasn't even a career. So, podcasting was out there, but it was still kind of I don't know, not something that everybody has or even really listen to regularly. I ended up working in these food plants, and then I quit working in food plants when our local slaughter plant shut down, and all the farmers were like, oh my gosh, what do we do? They had to come up with new food safety plans. They were trying to figure out how to open a small county run slaughter plant. It was a mess. And I started doing that as a consultant. And through that, ended up getting headhunted to another commodities plant where when I moved there, I met my husband, which was awesome. And we're a yours, mine, and ours family. So we moved and decided to start fresh with our kids, and that I was going to be a stay-at-home mom for a while, just to help our kids transition into new parents, new school, new town, the whole thing. And oh man, we were loving life. Kids are doing 4-H. We're wrestling. We lived in a place where literally we could pick up the kids after school and go hunting for 3 hours in the mountains right afterwards. It was dream life all the way. And about a year and a half into our marriage, we have a new baby and everything's going great. And my husband, at what we thought was a fairly routine doctor's appointment with a little bit of follow-up tests, was diagnosed with end-stage liver disease at 33 years old. They pretty much told us that day, get your affairs in order, you may have a year. Whew. Being single, I was a single mom, he was a widower. We meet each other and we just start this miraculous, beautiful life, and gone. Poof.
Wow.
It's almost too heavy for words. So after a sobbing phone call to the VA hospital, because they couldn't tell me anything. And they would say things like, have you heard of the liver diet? Well, aren't you supposed to tell me about the liver diet? I finally had the fellow that I'd been working with say, we heard if you live a cleaner lifestyle, it may improve his quality of life for the time that he has left. And I was done. I have an answer. My husband, I felt bad for him. He was so depressed at the time, obviously,
Yeah.
especially he had lost his first wife just a few years before that. And now he was looking at, potentially end of life himself. And we have all these kids. kids. And I was like, I made it my life's mission. I was going to figure this out. And what it came down to is we needed to be eating all whole foods, staying away from chemicals, and changing how we looked at Western medicine. It should be only used as a backup and not like a preventative or a maintenance. Like you use more natural things. And so I'm thinking, okay, I was an ag major. I grew up on a ranch. My dad was pretty old school. Like, you cut yourself, you rub dirt in it. If a ranch hand got cut, he went to the vet to get sewed up. Like, you know, I'm like, I can handle anything. So we bought our 40-acre farm and I'm like, I'm going to learn how to grow everything and it's not going to be a problem. Well, it's a lot of work and was no manual on how to do this.
Hmm.
And even though the homestead movement has definitely exploded over the last several years, I still struggle to find that like start to finish. How do we do this? So while I'm learning myself, like one of them is like I'm literally standing here staring at this single milk cow that my husband wanted. And I'm like, if this is going to make him happy and feel joyful and have hope, let's get the milk cow.
Hmm.
And so the poor girl, we still have her. She's standing there in front of us and he's like, what do we do with her? I don't know. And he's like, you're the one who grew up, you're the one who like worked in the dairy unit in college. And I'm like, yeah, that was milking like 100 cows. I know how to sanitize equipment. I know how to run cows through chutes. I don't know how to have one cow. That's when it really clicked for me that there's probably a lot of other people who have the same questions. Even people that feel really comfortable with like their food and agriculture backgrounds. When you're suddenly thrown into a situation or you choose to reclaim a lot of those skills that we've lost, there isn't like a start to finish explanation on how to do this.
Hmm.
And that's how the homestead education got started. I guess I should probably take one little minute and say 9 years into our journey, my husband now has a fully healed liver and a clean bill of health. So what we have done has absolutely worked 100%. And we feel so blessed to have had the opportunity to not only experience this, but share it with others.
I mean, that story, you could write a book on that.
One day.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. It's crazy. I'm trying to process like what it probably felt like in that moment and what, like trying to imagine how I would react. And, when you're faced with those kinds of decisions of like, let's find the joy in the time that we have left, that can become a whole focus of like, let's do this now. This is where we're going. Is that kind of what your mind was just focusing on, let's enjoy this? Or were you like, this is gonna save him? This is happening.
Yeah, I was more like, this is going to save him. This is happening
Hmm.
like that. I had lost my dad and brother to liver disease in the 2 years before this.
Wow.
Now, for completely different reasons, but to lose like the two most important men in my life and then meet my amazing husband and to be told that he was dying of the same disease, like I was like, this is a no. Like,
Hmm.
I don't care what I have to do to figure this out. I will figure this out. He wasn't as optimistic as me, but I have that gene that tells me there's nothing I can't do, which is my like best attribute and biggest fault at the same time. He definitely wasn't on board for everything, but now we do keynote talks and we call it Good Food and Stubborn Wives,
That's a good name. I
right?
feel like that could describe a lot of people in this
Hmm.
lifestyle. When you were, you said you bought the 40-acre farm, you bought the milk cow, you guys were making all these changes. Was there any part of you that at that point was like, what am I doing if this doesn't work?
Yes and no. Part of it was we knew that there was a chance it wouldn't. And
Hmm.
so buying the farm and getting us settled and getting the kids settled again and giving them something where they had purpose and to focus on was a big part of the goal because then if he didn't make it, we had something really stable, something that was going to, give us joy. There was enough room for everybody and we would have a strong foundation. But I just didn't really, every month that his labs came back good or better, just made me push harder, no matter how hard everything else was.
That's amazing that you guys were able to do that. And I mean, that's a very pivotal period of time that you guys changed his life, your life, your kids' lives. And
And
basically because you just decided like this is how it's gonna go.
yeah, like I said, tenacity, but it's I don't think people a lot of times realize what it means to really fully embrace that like self-sufficient, create everything yourself lifestyle because it's not just learning to cook from scratch or just learning to raise your own
Mhm.
chickens. I mean, just one part of the process is, like I want to raise meat birds, but I want to find birds that haven't been vaccinated because we don't want to add anything extra to his liver. Next, I'm feeding them non-GMO food. And then, when I butcher them, I can't use the chemicals to like sanitize that I normally would. And then when I cook them and when I make the broth and, like all these steps, our kids still play sports and I mean, my husband's on the fire department. There's all these different things that we do. I still need to like be able to pressure can and all that stuff so that we have, like convenience meals, for
Mhm.
lack of better
Yeah.
word, while we're also making all of our house cleaners and we're making our own medicines and I'm doing tinctures and I'm dehydrating. And our house is a full-blown production plant most days. And I've learned how to make it work where it doesn't feel like that all the time. It's just our home and we have a rhythm to it and stuff. But there was a lot of times where it felt like it was a 20-hour a day job to produce everything that we like consume or put on our bodies or clean our homes with.
And I think anybody that has attempted to go down this route, like you get to that point real quick of first being like, oh my gosh, I can't do anything the easy way or the way that it's like super efficient that I can just like, oh, I can go pick this up from the store. If you
Hmm.
look at the options, you're like, no, I can't. For you guys, for that, the reasons for that was the liver contaminants.
Hmm.
And that's just very overwhelming, first and
Hmm.
foremost. And then the time aspect of getting it all done is huge.
Luckily, we loved doing a lot of the things already. Like we like gardening, we like having animals, we like hunting, we like huckleberry picking. So I mean, we're out huckleberry picking and I'm foraging other herbs and it's made it where it's really fit our lifestyle, but there's been days
Yeah.
that I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, but over the last 9 years, like I said, we've really got it into a rhythm where it's just how our home runs. And we have stores, stocked up, and I have tinctures that are made and ready to go. And, so we're not having to be chasing every piece of it anymore.
And that's a huge help when you have those systems in place. And I want to talk more about that because I think that is the part that discourages people most is like
Hmm.
you do all this preparation, you buy all of these specific things, you lay out all these plans, and then one thing goes wrong and it's like you have to completely you know, throw that all out. Okay, start over. So
Oh, I
figuring
mean,
out those systems.
we butchered 200 birds one time. The power went out, which wasn't that big of a deal. We have a generator and we were rotating freezers on the generator. We have like 7 freezers going at all times because
Mhm.
we have a little farm store here and stuff. And then we left for a conference for the weekend and we came home and when all the freezers had been rotated, the chicken freezer never got plugged in. 200 birds. I mean, we had like the feet all cut off and ready to go. We'd broke them down. We had whole birds and partial birds. And I mean, just that was our chicken, our broth, our
Mhm.
dog treats, like everything for the next year or more. Just gone.
Not to mention all the time and money that you put into growing them and butchering them. And oh my gosh,
Hmm. Yeah.
geez, that's a fun one to
Yeah.
come home to. Welcome back home. Yeah, so there's so many things like that. Like that's obviously a huge one.
Yeah.
But there's so many pieces of the process that one thing goes wrong and you're like, okay, well I have to do a whole bunch more research or I have to start over. And it can feel very discouraging. So I want to talk
And
about the things that you've found
yeah,
to
it's
help other
definitely
people get past that.
yeah, it's definitely a trial and error. And there's, like I said, there's nothing that's like start here and you're done. Like
Yeah.
even if like I were to write that tomorrow or somebody else were to write that tomorrow, everybody's scenario is different. Everybody's climate is different. Finances are different. There isn't just one path.
And I liked how you touched on the piece of like, even if you are involved in agriculture or were raised in agriculture, so often we see like a tiny piece of the puzzle there because of the way agriculture has
Hmm.
evolved to be so specialized. And it's like,
Hmm.
well, when you're responsible for all of it, even if you're super comfortable with your piece of the pie, it's just so much more than to take on. Before we get into that, like the things that you have identified to help with that piece of figuring that out, I want to talk more about the reason behind the clean eating and that and what kind of changes you guys saw with that. Like, was it just a compounding thing as you were getting his blood work back and you guys had made these changes, or was there a point where you're like, oh my gosh, this is making a huge difference?
Both. I mean, the timeline on that, had loved to have been like, okay, we ate all salad for a month and he was healed, like
Yeah.
it didn't work like that. And it wasn't a straight line. But we went to his first 6 month appointment. So after you kind of get a diagnosis like that, they say, okay, we'll see you in 6 months if you're still alive and we'll scan you for liver cancer. What? 'Cause I guess once like
You're
you're
just on your
have
own for 6 months
yeah.
then?
Oh, pretty
Oh
much,
my
yeah.
gosh.
And then, like, if you don't follow all their rules and then you do become eligible for a transplant or something, if you don't follow all their rules to a T, you're off the transplant list. But then they're like, you need to follow the liver diet. Okay, I bought 10 different books and joined 5 different Facebook groups, and they all say something different. So, one thing that was really nice is when we moved to where we're at now, we found a doctor who was really on board for what we were doing. She's very holistic. She's, choose what you want to do and we'll work through it together. And she was really on board for us trying some things like, raw milk and herbals and stuff that, like, if you go to a conventional doctor and say, we want to switch to, like he has like asthma and allergies. So rather than him taking steroids and stuff, we want to switch to him drinking Mullen tea. Well, that's not FDA approved, so that doesn't like land on the list.
Mhm.
So we found a doctor who's like, yeah, she's like, just keep in touch with me with what you're doing, be smart about it. If you're unsure, ask. And I mean, she's not even an herbalist, but she will do an hour-long appointment with us and research things that we want to try or do and give us her advice along with it. And
Mhm.
then she's like, as far as I'm concerned, you're still following doctor's suggestions. And if it comes to a point where you have to go over to a liver doctor, I will turn in my whole report. So that's been really wonderful to work with a doctor like that. So after our first 6 month appointment, what we saw there is he had something called portal vein hypertension. And that's one of the ways that they flag liver disease. And your portal vein, I don't even know how to describe it, but it kind of goes like through your liver or through your spleen, which his spleen was enlarged too, and into your liver. And when your liver starts getting scarred, it backs that blood up. And so there's a lot of pressure right there. And that's where people start having problems up in their esophagus and stuff because that blood starts backing up. And so his first appointment, his portal vein hypertension was almost gone. So right off the bat, he was starting to have better flow through his liver, but his liver was still enlarged. His spleen was still enlarged. His labs were all still pretty wonky. There's something called a MELD score, and that's like where you're at on it's metabolic end of life disease or something like that. I mean, it's so the higher your score. And I mean, he wasn't through the roof even from the beginning, but they called his compensated liver failure, which means he was still doing well, but his liver was not. And eventually it goes to non-compensated. We just kept at it. I was like, look, it's working, and he's like, well, everything else is still bad. And I'm like, but your portal vein hypertension is gone, like that's something.
Mhm.
So we kept at it. And we had another doctor that we met with more regularly, and they did labs on him like every month. And we were starting to see his labs consistently look better. It wasn't a straight line, but sometimes they were a little higher, sometimes they were a little lower, but the overall trend was down.
Mhm.
And that's when he really like started to have the buy-in in it and work really hard with us. Like, not that he was depressed, At that point is when like we had wanted to have another baby, and he's like, well, if I'm dying, I don't want another baby. So then I'm mourning him and I'm mourning this child that I had planned on. And at that point, he goes, I feel comfortable maybe going ahead and having another kid. Like, even if I still may be dying, it's not going to be tomorrow. Because I mean, we were almost at a year at this point, and they told him he'd be dead in a year, and he was doing great. He'd lost weight, and his labs were all looking good. And so, yeah, we decided to have another child, which we ended up having about, I think it's almost 2 years later after that. He's exhausting though, so I don't know. But so then we did another year of working with the doctors. So that was his fourth appointment. And in his fourth appointment, his liver was back, or his spleen was back to normal size. His liver was back to normal size, no portal vein hypertension, and his labs were perfect. And they said, well, we don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. And I don't think we need to see you anymore, or at least regularly. So make sure you get your labs done every 6 months to a year with your primary care. And if we see anything wonky, schedule an appointment with us. So we did that for about 3 years. And obviously, Everything has stayed really good. One of the things that kind of kicked this all off is he had wanted weight loss surgery. Overweight, struggling, with getting the weight back off after PTSD and cortisol levels and everything from being in Iraq. And they had told him, no, like, we're not going to pay for your weight loss surgery because you're going to die. And so after 6 years, they agreed to go ahead and pay for his weight loss surgery. And he'd lost weight, but it's still, it was not dramatic weight loss. And so he went in and had that surgery. And she goes, while I'm in there, so this woman, she does pediatric bariatric surgeries. That's what she normally does. But the VA was short doctors. And so they asked her to fill in. So she's like, I see liver disease on kids all the time. Like, I want to take a really good look at his liver while I'm in there. So while she was there, I think they did like 2 or 3 biopsies and she did a scope on like his whole liver. Like she's like, I turned it over, I did everything. And his biopsies were completely clean. And on a visual, he had light scarring on one of his lobes. And she's
Wow.
like, I have never seen, she's like, I went back and looked at his old scans and stuff. She's like, I've never seen this before. She's like, tell me what you're doing because I deal with children all the time and you guys have all these kids that are eating the liver diet with you. Like, tell me what
Hmm.
you're doing. And I still work with her almost 3 years later.
That's crazy. And that's amazing you guys were actually able to see, that real change on his liver.
Hmm.
That's so cool.
We still treat him like he has liver disease just to always stay safe, but it makes it where we don't worry if we want to go out to eat or on a hot summer day, he's like, "Oh, I feel like an ice cream or a fizzy soda or something." Like he doesn't have to feel scared all the time
Hmm.
because his body is now healed enough that his liver can handle a light load.
That's an incredible story.
Thank you.
And great motivation for making the change to the homesteading kind of lifestyle. And you have made a huge impact on other people as you kind of teach them how you did these things and the changes you've made. What has been some of the biggest things that you've taken away from your journey in making all of these changes? I mean, obviously, other than saving your husband's life.
Right. Well, like we said, like you said, I've made a pretty big impact in other places too, and that's that I realized. My husband and I kind of joke through all this is, his liver disease, our weight struggles and stuff kind of all come from the 80s kid lifestyle, 80s, 90s kid lifestyle,
Yeah.
where, you had two parents gone at work all the time, kids that were basically raising themselves. We lived on boxed mac and cheese. And as we grew into adults, even those of us who like, I always felt like I embraced home cooking. And then I realized there was so many other steps that weren't even talked about that my mom didn't do and my grandma didn't do, but were really normal things.
Hmm.
Like when after we do chicken dinner, we immediately make broth. It takes us 5 extra minutes to throw everything in the pot. And the next day I have broth. Even if I don't feel like canning it, it's probably only a gallon. I stick it in the fridge and we use it. I just realized that there has been like a breakdown in like food, agriculture, traditional skills. Like you were even saying, like how agriculture has become so specialized, it doesn't integrate with each other anymore. And it's ended up where not just the people, but agriculture itself is so separated from everything that nobody has a full picture of what we're actually consuming anymore.
It's crazy to think how fast that all happened. Um,
Really, really fast, like
yeah.
in like, oh, 70 years
Yeah, or I mean,
or
yeah,
less. Yeah.
less. It's crazy to think about that. As you were saying that, like the pieces that we skip over in cooking is what I think woke me up a little bit to how much I didn't know because you'd be reading a cookbook and it'd say like use this brand of, something and I'm like, why why would I do that? Like I can make that. Why would
Right.
I
Like use a
put
10
in
ounce
a
can of stewed
package of
tomatoes or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
like what just and I can't remember what it was now, but it was like something like use a block of this and I'm like, wait a second. Why is that in a recipe book that we're saying,
Hmm.
you know, this is and it was I think it was even like a from scratch cooking book and I'm like, what?
I bought a series of cookbooks from somebody who like kind of totes themselves as like the old-fashioned cook.
Hmm.
And every single recipe was like, 3 cans of 10.3 ounce green beans, which is the amount that you get in the
Yeah,
store, not how many quarts of green beans is that?
right.
Because I can mine, and
Yeah, or tell
I
me
was
an
really
ounces or
disappointed that that was, I don't know, like I would at least like to see 3 cups of green beans or something, because then, and I know it makes it more convenient for some people, but maybe do that in parentheses, like 3 cups equals a can and a half or something,
yeah.
so that
It's
it
one
isn't
thing to make
just,
it accessible versus like
well, no,
that's not what you should be focusing on, especially if it's an old fashioned or from scratch cookbook.
right? And like it makes it where then the mindset of the people reading it is, oh, that, from scratch is from a can.
Right.
And that's really not the case. I mean, especially for us, the sodium levels that are in those to can is, I mean, that's for people with liver disease and a lot of other diseases, is it's insane the amount, like 2,300 milligrams of
Mm.
sodium for 1 can of green beans. So, I mean, even with that, like canning ourselves, I started using a special sea salt that the flavor was so strong, like in a good way, that I could use about a third to a half of the amount of salt suggested, even to like can our
Wow.
vegetables and stuff.
As you were researching these things, because I think that's where so many people that are interested in homesteading get stuck, is it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much information I need to research and learn before I can really do this. Or or even as you're doing it, what did that process look for like for you guys, and how has it kind of changed as you've evolved in this lifestyle?
Well, the research has actually been like the biggest thing that really like another thing that changed our lives for the better. And it was that I was buried by the research as well. With that, we had decided to start homeschooling our kids because if we're only going to have a year together, let's spend it together. And I was trying to be this new homeschool mom that does all the things, 8 hours of school where you're getting your math and your English. And whew, I was exhausted. And I realized that I could, even still, I thought I was really like outside the box on this, but I was like, I could take a year and not do regular curriculum and buy an ag curriculum. And being an ag major, we can use like this ag curriculum as a foundation, and I can do my research. The kids can do their assignments, and then I can blend those together. And then we're all learning together while we do everything, which has been the biggest piece for us is we do everything together. That we aren't like this fragmented family that, the kids are at school and dad's at work and we are all home doing this together. So it's like a team effort all the time.
Mhm.
And that's when I started putting together the lessons because there actually were no agriculture science curriculum on the market. There was nothing for homeschoolers. And as I started digging into, college textbooks and that type of stuff, they're just none of it fit. Like, I didn't want to have to also spend my time translating how to do a, 4,000 acres of wheat to, hey guys, we're going to start a small chicken garden where we grow some sorghum for our chickens. Like, it's
Mhm.
just, there was too much translation that needed to happen.
Mhm.
So I just started doing it myself. That was where it really narrowed it down for me is I made a list of everything we wanted to do and needed to do. And I started just one at a time, really trying to master everything. Now, for us, we had to do that on hyperspeed. So sometimes for me, it would be 2 days of mastering something, and now we're adding something else to the list because I didn't have time. But for somebody that is going down this path for the first time, I usually suggest make a list of 10 items from the grocery store that you buy every month and start making a plan on how you're going to source those locally or how you're going to grow them yourself. And then focus on 3 things at a time: one in the garden, one in the kitchen, one with animals. And that way you're not overwhelmed and you can rotate. You're not like stuck in the kitchen for days on end trying to master bread or something. And it's okay to take conveniences. Like when we bake bread, I'm not standing there kneading bread for hours. We only do sourdough a few times a year for special occasions where I'm like, having to like knead and fold or whatever it
Yeah.
is. We put our bread dough in the bread machine. We start the bread machine on the dough cycle. We go garden or do school or whatever. And when it goes off, we go and we put it into 2 bread pans and we let it rise again and then we bake it.
Mhm.
Like, I don't need to stand in the kitchen for hours on end in a linen dress, and not get anything done. Like, I'm out there working cows. I'm working in the garden. I'm learning to cook. I'm doing all the things and I get to enjoy each piece of it. So I don't really get burnout anywhere. And when we're ready to move on to something else, the thing that I started originally no longer feels like work. It just feels like part of life. The bread's always a really good example. We start our bread at the same time we start our coffee in the morning. So literally while I'm waiting for my coffee to brew, I'm dumping all the stuff in the bread machine to get going. A lot of times my son's coming down from the barn at that time. And so I have fresh milk to put right into the bread machine, and it really didn't take any extra effort. About lunchtime, we throw it in the oven and we have fresh bread for lunch.
And those little things that you can do to make it easier and part of routine, I feel like is what makes a huge difference.
Hmm.
Because it's so
Like,
easy to have it all pile up and then you're like, I can't do any of this. It's so much, like to make all of these decisions and do all these things and figure out how to make it all work. But if you can make it part of your routines you're already doing, that's where it gets easier.
another one is like the broth that I talked about. Every time we cut up veggies, like I put all the scraps in a bag in the freezer. When we have chicken for dinner, I take the carcass and I throw it in a pot, all those veggies, cover it with water, seasonings, and let it cook. Sometimes I'll just turn it on low overnight. Some people use the crock pot so they don't have their stove on overnight. And I get up in the morning and I have broth. I pull all the extra pieces out of it. I let it cool. That goes in the fridge. We have broth for whatever. If we didn't get all the meat off the carcasses first, then I sit there and I pick it all off and we'll use it for tacos or, like I'll put it in a little bag and freeze it and the kids will put it on like pizzas at lunch and stuff like that.
That's like so many steps that you just took care of without even really having to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was maybe 10, 15 minutes of extra work. And honestly, how much time do you spend in the kitchen prepping food? Or how much extra time do you spend at the grocery store on money that you spend at the grocery store? That honestly, the kids are afraid I'm going to put them to work, so they leave me alone when I'm doing stuff like that. And I can watch what I want to watch on YouTube, you know?
Right? Yeah. That fear of, oh no, mom's gonna give us a chore is always
Right?
the powerful motivator.
Yeah. Not that they don't work. I mean, but half the time they're like coming back in and then chatting with me, and next thing I know, they're pulling a piece of carcass out and picking meat off and stuff. But it does make it where I do get a little alone time sometimes. So
Yeah.
I'll take it.
And I think focusing more on the education piece, like
Mhm.
there's the homestead stuff, there's the learning those skills and researching those skills, but then there's this whole other piece of the education, the skills that you're acquiring and that you're teaching your kids as you go. I mean, I think anybody can see the value of that, of having
Mhm.
kids that understand these skill sets, but I think it goes a step further when we think about raising kids who are getting ready to be in a world in the real world. I guess we don't
Mhm.
know what that world looks like anymore. It's kind of
Yeah.
crazy and chaotic, but you're giving them skills and perspective that is just completely, honestly, it's completely foreign to so many people.
Hmm.
What kind of things have you run into with that? How has that affected you guys as you've raised your family?
For us, it felt natural quick, but we were kind of already that family to some extent. We just did
Mhm.
it on high speed. But as I go out and teach people, the biggest question or concern that I get is a lot of families are like, I was never taught this, so how do I teach my kid? Or even sometimes they don't understand the why. Like, why do I need to know how to cook all these foods from scratch when I can buy it at the store? And sometimes I think in agriculture, we joke about that a lot. Like, food doesn't come from the store, it comes from the farm. But there is a little bit of a legitimacy to that. There's like, the kids that are like, milk comes from the store, and you're like, ha ha. But even as adults, I think a lot of times we go, yeah, I mean, I can, my husband hunts and we always have meat in the freezer and everything. So why do I need to be making a bunch of stuff at home when I can go buy everything I need from the store to go with that meat? But what if you can't one day? And a lot of people think of that as, well, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist thinking the world's going to end or whatever.
Hmm.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about the time that we lost power for almost 3 weeks here in North Idaho. Or when COVID shutdowns happened and I was in the hospital with my youngest in the NICU and my five older kids were running the farm and we live 45 minutes from town. We did have people bringing them meals, but my kids were not going without because our pantries were stocked. Or even, you get a medical diagnosis like my husband's. A lot of people I could have let it break me. And honestly, I probably did let it break me in a way that I became super hyper vigilant in what I was doing. But a lot of people would be like, okay, I'm breaking in another way. And instead of taking those steps to heal their spouse or themselves or their child, they like recoil in on
Hmm.
themselves. What if you already knew how to do this stuff? The reason people like recoil or remove themselves from situations is because they don't know how to handle them. It's a lot of anxiety. A lot of people felt that during COVID times. Like, that's why the whole sourdough boom happened. Like, I can't buy bread, I can't buy yeast. Now what? All my options were taken away from me. Well, guess what? You can make your own yeast and you can make your own bread at home. And I think that that was really powerful for a lot of people that now they're going, why didn't I already have that skill? That seems like such a basic human skill. Why do I not have it?
That's a change in perspective, I think. And it's impacting a lot of people who have become interested in learning and
Hmm.
developing these skills. But I think it's creating change, and I hope it's creating change in a bigger way in our world of kind of just looking around and saying, why is it this way now? What changed, or how did we get here?
I mean, I have a little bit of a timeline that I followed in my studies. It's not like 100% how I got here, but it definitely, and it's so when I forget what it was called. It was like the Rule something Act in like
Mhm.
1906. Not the Homestead Act. It was like I never even heard of it myself till I was
Oh.
reading a textbook recently. It was like the Rural People's Act or something.
Hmm.
And it was put into place by Teddy Roosevelt because they believed too many people had moved out of rural communities, and so rural communities were dumb and they needed more education. And that's when they like took away like the community schools and school districts got put into place because they didn't want
Okay.
the kids all like if you only learn from your family, there's good and bad with both of that. But when they did that, they started teaching kids like they even said it like the boys do learn how to farm and the girls learn how to like preserve food and then they also learn
Hmm.
their reading and writing and that type of stuff. And it's like that's awesome because we need to continue to know how to do that. I mean, back in the first half of the 20th century, like 1900s, I mean, I think something like 60% of people stated that they were farmers. And so, like families needed to carry on those traditions, that knowledge. A lot of people were still living on multi-generational farms. Even the people who were moving to urban settings, they were first generation living in like more urban
Sure.
settings. And so they still had that knowledge. I think it was 1963, the vocational agriculture or the Vocational Education Act passed. And that's when it took like agriculture, home economics, and any of those other types of skills. And instead of saying, like right now, back at that point, when we went into high school, that's when we started learning what we were going to do after we left high school. When this passed, they kind of said, now you're going to learn all the core subjects and you can take agriculture, home economics, or whatever as a CTE class, the career
Hmm.
technical education classes. And then high school students were no longer being taught a trade of any sort unless they chose to take one of those paths. And when they graduated from high school at 18, they're like, okay, now you're supposed to be a functioning member of society or go to college. Not everybody can go to college, but they had no skills to be a functioning member of society. And that's because all of those skills that normally had been taught in schools are now being considered like a separate entity. I heard a while back somebody said, hey, if kids started school at 6 months old, within one generation, we would believe that children needed to go to school to learn how to walk. So we now believe that you have to go to ag school to learn how to farm, that the
Hmm.
average person can't grow their own food or they can't, home
Right.
cook because they didn't go to culinary school or
Yeah.
something. And they even said when they were putting these laws in place, well, they can learn these skills at home and this doesn't need to be taught at school. But within one generation, the people that weren't already being taught this at home now no longer have those skills to
Hmm.
teach the next generation. And then there was a lot of people who did have the skills who were kind of like buying into that convenience
Hmm.
of, hey, we can get boxed meals and it's so much easier. But then to afford the boxed meals, both parents need to be working. And it just kind of has turned into this whole cycle where of children or high schoolers who take ag classes, only 3% of them ever even go into commercial agriculture. But I guarantee every single one of them eats every day. So why isn't our food more prevalent in our education, whether that's public school, private school, homeschool, across the board? Like, why isn't that put as high of importance as maybe like learning how to code or something like that?
And I think so much of it ties into how the food system evolved alongside, like you said.
Hmm.
The convenience meals were part of it, but then it was also like, well, farmers are growing more to produce food for not just their family or their family and the neighbor's family. It's like, no,
So
they're
then less people
producing,
needed to farm.
less people needed to farm. And so then you were expected to be able to purchase your meals or your food from somebody else. So it's not your responsibility anymore. It's crazy to think about what that's done to our society, that we completely took the responsibility of feeding ourselves off of our plates. And we assigned that responsibility in part to the government and in part, to the people who are employed in that industry. But
Hmm.
it's just crazy to think about.
But then think about what lack of purpose so many people have, and look at the levels of anxiety and depression and all that type of stuff. I'm not saying it's a direct correlation, but it doesn't help.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, as you know, a lot of women who were housewives, like say in the last generation, I feel like a lot of women that are housewives now, they're re-embracing that role of creating for their family. But you look
Mhm.
at like the last generation, they're a stay-at-home mom, but their kids are at school all day long. They come home and do homework and have sports, and everybody's busy, so you're picking up a pizza for dinner, the husband's buying breakfast on his way out the door, and his paycheck is technically going to feed the family, but it's going to pay for the pizza stops and the
Mhm.
soccer games and the, like, what is it, the skins for their kids. What's that game where they
Whatever video game, yeah.
Minecraft or something?
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't imagine like working that hard to pay for, my kid's video game to be better dressed than me. And I
Oh
mean, think how
man.
much purpose that takes out of the breadwinner's day?
Yeah, and I don't think we give enough credit to that, to the purpose behind
Hmm.
caring for something and putting the time and the energy and the thought into the things that sustain your family. Because what do we exchange that for? Like, what is the breadwinner's new focus then? It's, to set their child up for better opportunities, which creates all kinds of fun things in the education and sports world. And it's
Hmm.
to, you know, one up the neighbor. It's to look
Yeah.
better, to get the newer version of whatever is in.
And then what purpose do our kids have? Our
Mhm.
kids' purpose is just to do exactly what they're told in
Yeah.
school, maybe do sports, maybe not, I don't know. And a lot of times, then we're so busy in the afternoons and evenings getting ready to start this all over again that our kids' purpose is to stay out of our way. Go sit on
And
your tablet, don't be loud.
and I think that's such a hard system to get out of. Like so many of us see that issue, but breaking out of it is hard because you have to make big changes. You can make
Hmm.
small ones and it makes a difference, but if you really want a different result, you have to make big changes, and it's becoming
You
hard to do.
you do. I mean, I saw something the other day. It was like a millennial mom thing, and it was we are a bedroom generation raising living room kids. And I feel that because like I was in my bedroom. I wasn't around my parents. I mean, my dad had a ranch, so I definitely spent a lot of time with him when I was on the ranch, but my parents were divorced. So like I didn't want to be around my mom. I did my homework, away from her. I had a TV in my room. I That is where I lived. And my children are always within like 10 feet of me. And honestly, that's a little like
Overstimulating.
I'm like, we have a 4,000 square foot home and we're on 40 acres. Go away. But it's that we do everything together. And I'm not just talking my little kids, like my teenagers. I mean, I wasn't feeling that good the other day, so I was working from bed, like just watching a
Mhm.
movie and like doing emails and stuff. Next thing I know, I had my two 17-year-olds in bed with me doing their geometry. I mean, it was kind of silly. Like, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Why are you in my bed? And then I was like, I have both my like older kids here, like sprawled across the bed doing their geometry, watching the movie that I want to watch all together. Like
Mhm.
how much more could I ask for?
Right. Yeah. One thing I'd want to hear you talk more about is, when you were making, and you said you were kind of living this lifestyle already, but when you were making these changes, I think a lot of us, we have kids already. When
Hmm.
we are part of the system, or, we're doing public school and both parents work full time.
Yeah.
And to make these changes, it takes a lot of effort and research. And to bring your kids along with you in that is so hard
Hmm.
because you have to go slower. And then it's
You
like,
do.
well, did I even accomplish the thing that I set out to do here? So, how do we approach that as a family?
It's really a mindset shift for both yourself and for your kids, and you can guide that for them. Because we definitely, yes, we kind of live this lifestyle already, but we did throw our kids into something much larger.
Hmm.
And one of the things right off the bat is how you talk about your job and how you talk about the chores that need to be done is gonna have them look at their chores and their responsibilities differently as well. Like what I always say is chores are an obligation and responsibilities are a privilege. You're privileged to have the things that you have. You're privileged to have the opportunity to go to school. You're privileged to get to be able to have a garden and have that be part of your responsibility, even at, 12 or 14 or whatever. And another thing we do is trust earns more responsibility. Kids are always wanting trust, and they start that from really little. With the little kids, it's, I want to be the one that gets to stir the pot. Well, I can't
Yeah.
trust you to stir the pot until I know that you're safe with dumping the ingredients in the bowl because the pot is hot. And so you just work with them. You let them do it every time. And when they show you that they can do it responsibly, then you let them stir the pot. They get a little bit older. I want to be the ones that feed the cows, or I want to be the one that gets to run the rototiller because, they're a boy and they want to have the engine, or whatever it is. When you can, show me that you're responsible enough to handle this, then you get to do the next one. As teenagers, that turns into my kids handle their chores. I don't even have to worry about whether or not it's getting done. And then they're pretty much welcome to handle their own schooling, their own activities, their own social life on their own, because if I can trust them here in the house, I can trust them outside the house. And they really like that independence that they have earned through showing me trust. But a lot of families end up like, you just have to show me trust by doing your homework. There's not a substance with that, where when there's an everybody helps thought process in your home, that this isn't just a chore, this is something we're doing together and we rely on each other to have all these pieces work, it makes a difference. And sometimes, like it's as mundane as taking the trash out. I expect you to take it out every week. I'm not going to be the one to tell you to do that. It needs to be on the calendar what trash day is. You need to tell me when we're out of trash bags, so on and so forth. And if I go into the kitchen to cook dinner and the trash is full, guess I can't cook dinner. And if you have to wait and you're hungry, and if we finally get to the point where I tell everybody else to make a PB&J because you're refusing to come empty the trash, I do have one kid that would do that. So he has really bad ODD. And so, yeah, he'd be like, I don't want to take the trash out today. Great. The rest of us are going to have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for dinner, and you don't get dinner tonight. He's not going to starve over one meal, but it would definitely restart him in that nobody else got to have the good meal because I wouldn't do what I was supposed to do. We're big on natural consequences, and sometimes natural consequences don't always come naturally, especially for kids, because we have to, like, I still have to cook dinner for everybody else,
Right.
like it's still gonna all happen. So we have to construct some natural consequences, like you don't get up and feed the animals in the morning, you don't get your phone today. Because if you didn't get up and go to your job, you would get your phone shut off. Now, their phone doesn't automatically get shut off when they don't go to work because I'm paying it.
Right.
But if you're not going to follow your responsibilities, just like in real life, you would no longer have that extra.
I think it's incredible the sense of purpose that some of these things do instill in, I'm not even going to say kids, in people, like
Hmm.
having other people and animals and things that rely on you. It's such a part of who we are as humans, I think,
Yeah.
and it missing from so much of how we live life now.
And honestly, if you don't know how to do it, the best thing you can do for your kids is model being excited to learn it. Show that, have that humility that I don't know this and I want to learn it. Let's do it together.
Bring them along for the journey.
Yeah.
I want you to tell us more about, all of the things that you offer, because I know you have a lot of different things that you've created to help people. What are some of those things that we can have access to?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned, I started like making a list and creating lessons for my kids. And when I saw how scared people were during like the pandemic and like the anxiety that came with it, I was like, I have what people need to be able to learn these skills themselves, but also to teach them to their kids. And that's when I created the Homestead Education. It has my podcast that's, more geared for adults where we talk about homesteading, homeschooling, business, personal growth, farm policy, just kind of whatever I feel like would help people grow in this journey. But then I also have written agriculture science curriculum for homeschoolers and small programs. And when I say small programs, a lot of private schools, charter schools, even some small public schools use it at this point. I have a full year agriculture science. I have it anywhere for preschool through high school. The high school one actually, it meets national ag standards for what it covers. It doesn't have like the leadership and the SEA part, just because I'm not there and everybody's home. But even the leadership part, I teach a lot of quality of character that gets the kids involved in their communities and stuff. We have now, I believe there's about 50,000 families and schools that are now using this program because so many people are seeing the importance of learning agriculture as being integrated into everyday life, that it isn't a separate entity. It's something that we should be embracing ourselves. Whether you live on a farm or in a city, it doesn't matter. And then I've provided a lot of other hands-on courses and economics courses and history courses and things like that, just to really teach adults and children alike how food fits into everyday life.
Those resources look really fun. Like I was looking at is it the president's
Yeah, I did
agriculture history? I
the
think that would be
agricultural
so
history
fun.
of President's Day.
Yeah. Some of those things I'm like, I'm just gonna get this just to read for fun for myself because
Right? It's,
yeah.
and I link it to like fun videos that, just kind of lay it out in a way that I don't think that we always think about. And
Well,
sometimes my 6-year-old won't do the coloring pages, so while I'm reading to him, I color them, so it's
yeah.
just an excuse for me.
Yes, that part's sometimes fun. My kids ask me to color with them, and I'm like, absolutely, I will do
Right? We have coloring contests, and my husband will never participate. He's so boring.
that. Where can people find the resources that you have
Of
available?
course. So thehomesteadeducation.com is my website, and it, gives you links to all my socials and the store and my podcast and all of it. And a little bit on our story and stuff too. So
Perfect. Well, I will be sure to include that in the show notes so people can check that out. I really appreciate you being on the show today, Kody. And I just want to leave people with, one more thought from you of, what if you could go back and tell your younger self or your past self something that you've learned along this journey that maybe can inspire people to stay the course or keep motivated on this path, what would it be?
there's so many, but learn skills now. A lot of people talk about how they're going to store 75 years worth of food or, 3 years worth of ammo or whatever it is. The best thing you can do is store knowledge, whether you're learning the skills or buying the books, because if that knowledge were to go away, if you didn't have the internet tomorrow or whatever, that's going to be the way that you can fill those gaps for yourself and your family.
And if you don't have it, it's hard to pass it on too.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's
Exactly.
really gone. Well, thank you so much, Kody. I enjoyed you being on the show today.
Thank you. I really enjoyed being here.
If you've enjoyed spending time with us today, please take a moment to review the podcast on Apple Podcasts or join the conversation on social media. Do you have a topic you would like to discuss or know someone with a story to share? Apply to be a guest on the podcast at farmingonpurpose.com. You can follow the host of Farming on Purpose, Lexi, on your favorite social media platforms for more content by searching for Farming on Purpose. And remember, if you look around your table and aren't inspired by the people there, it's time to find a new seat.